Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for lesson 10 when we're going to look at a number of um, portions of that. The main event is the final design or the concept design that is your last assignment. We are also looking at your local network survey where we're taking a look at um, various permaculture designers in your area, some of the resources that you could turn to. But again, that's a bit of a minor part of the assignment. The main event is going to be our final design. So let me just share the screen here and we can take a look. There we go. We can take a look here at the discussion board itself. And you can see here we have two separate items. So we have a local network survey worth 4 points, and then the concept plan is worth 18. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the time and energy needed for both. The local survey should be pretty straightforward, but let's take a look at some of the things that we're hoping to get. So we want sort of people to research and list any permaculture groups or transition town or sort of like-minded groups in your area. And that's a really good exercise to go through. If you live in an area like I do, that list would be pretty small. And then if you're in more of a city center, you're going to have a fantastic list, I'm sure. We're looking at instructors and mentors and designers or farmers that are instructing regenerative ag or regenerative living or permaculture. And we also want to get a handle on the active design build companies that are in your area. And all of these things play into when the course is over, your next steps. And, this little survey might help you reach out to either groups or companies themselves if you're hoping to take your knowledge and go and work with work with a firm to learn a little bit more about how they design and build their products. And I would definitely recommend that for a lot of people hoping, even if you're hoping to go forward and have your own company at some point, designing and possibly installing. One of the best ways you can learn about that is to work for somebody else that has a little bit of a history and it's doing basically what you wish to do in the future. So that's something to consider. Let's take a look at one of our student examples here. We have to go near the end of the template file. We're now beyond lesson 1. So with this student's example, they have listed all of the things that we talked about. So designers and farms, some resources, as well as instructors or education centers. And where I live, our eco village is down in the Cowichan sort of south area of Vancouver Island, and they are a great resource for education. They are one amongst others. So that is, as you can see, a pretty condensed little bit of info here with some images. So that's great. Let us take a look at the next page here where they have Q&A. They didn't have any there. And then, of course, we're on to the concept plan, which is the final step in our course and basically the final step in the design process. So let us take a peek at that. Because that is the whole term concept is a good thing to keep in the back of your mind because we're not looking at a detailed for construction drawing. We're not looking for that. We're looking for a bit of a broader brush. And we want a good idea of the general concepts within your project site. Um, and here's a few components that we want you to list. So, of course, we want to see the existing plan, and that would be your base plan in its pre-design state. We want to see the concept plan itself. So that is, basically your final map and some explanations, the proposed design. Um, we want you to label things clearly. So that could be using labels, or it could be using a legend. We want to see the difference in the existing and your new plant material. So often a good way of showing that, and I believe we can use this as an example. There we go. I went by it already. So this is an example where existing materials are in gray and new plant materials are colored. So that is one way you can differentiate between existing and proposed. And it is a nice, you may find a better method that works for you, but if there is a way that you can visually differentiate those two, it will be a little bit more impactful, and it would be for your client and for anybody looking at it. So a couple of things we want to know: the mission statement, what is the intention? Again, the big picture, and that plays into this whole concept. We also want design goals list. So that's a nice thing to go through. So we have an overall mission, but what are some of the specifics? We want to see how your zones changed, because we did a zone map. I think it was less than 3 or 4. And we want to see how that has been modified. It may not change remarkably, and it also may change quite a bit. So it's good to show that. And your water management plan, which is a really important piece within a permaculture design. And for us, we put a lot of priority on this when we look at urban or acreage or farm properties. And then we look at soil fertility and some strategies, because if we want to have good plant health, we need to be really focused on soil fertility and continually improving that. We're also going to look at phasing and budget. And this is a little bit trickier because we haven't spent much time on that, but it does get you thinking about how it would be best to implement the drawing and what kind of rough costs might be involved. And that is really hard, I must admit. When you get out into, for those that are going to use this course as a stepstone and start designing and installing, that may be one of the tricky parts of your journey, is trying to determine budgets, and not so much how to phase it in. I find that's pretty obvious, but we definitely want, the budget is the tricky part. And in all honesty, that takes a little bit of time to learn. And that's more so trial and error, where you're implementing designs and tracking your expenses. And but it is a really important piece if you are doing this for others, right? So we're going to look at some of the permaculture principles and how you utilize those. We're going to look at social permaculture, and how your design addresses and improves those conditions in your area, as well as a SWOT analysis. So here are some of the elements broken down. And there's some resources here about crafting your vision or mission statement. So that's worth taking a look at if this is any sort of a stumbling block for anybody. There's some good examples at the bottom here. So there's quite a bit of information here to help support you if you have questions on how that phasing plan might work. And of course, here is our rubric, which I would recommend everybody take a look at as you're assembling your assignment, because this is what I use when I grade. And then I don't use this commenting, of course, but this is an important part to consider for sure, because you don't want to lose any potential marks by just mistakenly leaving certain information out. So when we take a look at the example here, we have a proposed plan. Now you're going to notice, if we go through this, this is a little different than what we're asking for in the template file itself. So if we go, and of course, this, as I've mentioned on a couple of occasions, this template file gets changed. It gets not radically changed, but we have improvements and things added probably on a class by class basis. So if you look at your template file, you'll see we're asking for that existing plan in the first sheet. And this example does not show that. We're jumping right into propose. So keep that in mind. Then we get into what you're trying to achieve, the concept plan, and then the design goals. This is a pretty rich page actually, because we end up getting the goals and your mission statement, statement of purpose. We get to see your proposed zones and pathways. So that's a very interesting sheet. We get to see the water management here, because we do need to think about that. It's great to be building soil and putting in new plants, but we definitely want to consider how we're going to support those as we go forward. And that could be, again, for a small urban site, or it could be a very large acreage site. For soil fertility is a big consideration. What are we doing to, basically constantly build your soil? And that is probably something people in the course here will discover as you do more and more work in your own landscape. You're going to see the importance of soils and paying attention to those and being as mindful of them as possible, because this is really what you're cultivating, not so much plants. Then we're going to look at your vegetation plan and what that looks like. And if you have some elements, some details you want to include, you can certainly do that. And then we get to this tricky part where we're looking at phasing and then into the permaculture principles. So that, this example here will have some of those. And you can see this is nicely laid out in that it's all labeled, and we have call outs going to these elements, and these are all nicely aligned so that it's quite easy to read. There's a nice amount of white space here. So this is well put together. We then have our concept plan, the design goals and proposed zones. So that looks great. And I'm not, oh, here we go. So this is an interesting little note here just on how the zones changed. So some of these did not, and others did change a little bit during the design process. Same with the goals here and some images. So these are all really well laid out. A little bit more on water management. And this person is collecting rainwater and distributing that to their landscape. Oh, sorry about that. And yeah, and the water plans are always really enjoyable to me. So this person's collecting rainwater in cisterns. They are also creating a rain garden, which is a great idea, as well as sending gray water into their landscape, which is wonderful. So that's great to see. That makes it pretty clear how they're going to help support their plant material. Now you'll notice on, just back up a bit, um, this water management plan, it could have been possible to place this on this page. And if you can, that's wonderful. And if you can't, no big deal having it as a second page. Is no worries. It's just nice to try and condense things if you can. Same with the soil fertility plan here. There was some space where could have added the base plan and even perhaps referencing a few of these notes where they may point to. And then we get into phasing and we get into budgeting, which again, that's something that's a course on all on its own. But it is an important thing to start to look at if you're designing landscapes for others. And then we get into our permaculture principles and social permaculture. And basically that is the end of the course and of that lesson. You'll see there's an appendix, so you can place items in that if you wish. Really depends on how you want to structure this. So nice thing is you'll have this template file as your own, and you can, if you're considering doing some design work for clients, for others, you may want to use some or all of the template file in your work. And I guess what I'll do, I've got a couple of examples of some of our work that I could show. Let me just make sure I'm sharing the right screen. There we go. Okay, so this was a project that we did. We phased this in over a couple of years. This was our sector compass that we put together. Pretty straightforward. So let me put the thumbnails back. So for ourselves, we'll call it template file, is that we will look at our sector analysis. Then we jump into looking at the water layer, which we've done here. We're looking at all these impervious surfaces, a rain garden, any other collection or sort of micro watershed, how much water potentially could affect or influence our client's property. A little bit of detail on some of those numbers, some of the volumes from both the impervious surface as well as the areas uphill. And then we will look at access. So we jump, the water really does drive the landscape for us, and access is our next step. Here, we ended up designing and installing new patio and planting areas, as well as an enclosed vegetable area for clients here. And then we look at soil. And this is sort of the beginning where we're going to have turf grass or ground cover, and where we're going to have soft landscape areas. So that makes it pretty easy. And then all of these layers sort of go on top of one another, and we end up with this. This would be, as noted on our drawing here, this was the initial concept. And that we present this, and then we have an allowance for feedback where we can make edits based on clients' feedback. And this is not a final planting plan. This is just generally showing where we see tree and shrub elements. And then we got into the final planting plan here, where all the plants are labeled, and then the numbers of plants, the size of the pots, the common and the botanical name. And then we also include a list. And this is the list we use. We generally would take this and send it off to our wholesale nurseries for pricing. And in the bottom here, so we have two lists. So one is for the front, and one is for the rear garden. Because in this project, we divided the phases up. So we basically came in and we demolished everything that was existing here. This was an old concrete patio surface, and there were some retaining walls here that were rotting, the old wooden retaining walls. So we removed those, and then we built the hard surface. So all the patio, all the walls went in, the stairs, and then our clients took a break. And the next spring we came and we did all the irrigation and all of the topsoil and the plants and this vegetable enclosure. And then the following year, which was this spring, we came in and we addressed this area and placed a rain garden in here. And then this is what's remaining, this final little piece. But that's changed a little bit. So here are, just going to make this a little bit bigger. So here are some of the details that we included. So on an urban design, when we do a package, we will include the concept, which was back here. And then we will oops, I don't think I've got to the right page here, sorry. This was our concept, right? Our sort of big picture. And now we're working at some details here. So the details are pretty vital in terms of knowing how to price the project and knowing, what to expect. So we had walls shown in 3D. We've specified the type of wall and the paving material and how that should be built. And we did the same with their vegetable garden. It was on a bit of a slope here. So we had to figure out how we were going to step that up and down. And it had to be protected from the deer. And then we reworked the front this spring when we were working on this. We we moved this rain garden downhill a little bit. And here you can see here's a little section of the rain garden. And that really, I needed to do that to see how we were going to construct this. And yeah, and that's a little detail on the rain garden itself. We had to put a drain at the base of it that we control with a valve. So it's not, because one of the challenges we had was we hit some hard material right at the very end of our excavation. And then we got water moving through the landscape, and it was pooling here. So for the winter, we wanted the ability to be able to drain it out, so we weren't, we weren't dealing with that bottom area being flooded for the whole winter. That's not, that wouldn't have been ideal for the plantings. So that was a detail that we added. And then the client wanted an enclosed little space for a spa, so we did that. So that's one little sample. I have another one here I can show, and then we can chat and take some questions if there are any. This is another little urban project that we were involved with. So we started with that sector analysis, and you'll notice that we're not completely north up here. One of those exceptions to the rule I'd like to do, but here we are directly north up on that project. But we're into the water plan here, so we're looking at a micro watershed, and in an urban setting, that's quite small. It really was just going uphill into the neighboring property. And this is more of the macro, and some important information, runoff info from the impervious surfaces in the project, and then a plan of how best to utilize some of the water that's moving through the area. So we have a little swale, with wood chip filled swale with a perforated pipe to pick up any excess that gets sent down into a little rain garden here. It's a very small one. We have an outdoor cooking area that roof surface fills some IBC totes here, and then it overflows into the rain garden. So this was sort of an important first step, and then we got to access, which was really just reshaping a walkway here to accommodate a future guest house, and then an outdoor cooking and entertainment area that was important. And then we looked at that soil layer. And that, of course, is the icing on the cake in a lot of ways. And here you can see we've grayed out existing plants and added color to those new ones coming in. And we have annual vegetables here, and then perennial plantings all around. And then this is the final concept. So this is, basically this is what we're after in your final concept or your concept plan, in that we generally know what's being planned here. We're not getting into specifics on what each plant is. If you want to include that's fantastic. We could have just labeled these as medicinal, edible, herbaceous plants. These are edible shrubs, as well as fruit and nut trees. So we could have done that, and that would have been perfectly fine. And then, of course, we did go down that path where we are looking at specifics. And here we have a tree and shrub planting plan. Here's the overall, and here's our perennial edibles. and planting plans. So it gives, I like doing this. I like splitting the herbaceous and the woodies. So because the woody plants typically give us our framework, our structure in the garden. This gives us a good idea of where we're going to get that. And then of course all this herbaceous material is the icing on the cake. As well, we did some details for their little pergola, which they're going to build themselves, and some notes here about that. And then their concrete unit paver. There's some details there on the sand and the 3/4 crush base that we often put below that, as well as some details on their rain garden and their swale here. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of an idea on on what we do. And over the years, this has been the sort of thing that uh, works for us in terms of our various layers that we present, our deliverables. So a little bit different than the OSU template file. The last example, that was only 8 sheets. The other one was 11. So far less sheets, but the reality is just to produce one sheet for us is quite a bit of labor. So it would be pretty much impossible for us to do use the OSU template file for our work just because of the sheer volume of information that's in there. But it is a great template file to learn from, and you may find that you pull out certain parts of that and reuse that, for your work going forward. So that is a little bit about the assignment and our process. And Pandora, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to chat about? I'm pretty much done my little spiel here on the assignment. Do you have any thoughts at all on what has been presented, or?
Yeah, so the from the beginning, when you're putting the existing plan, is that sort of like the base plan, except maybe kind of more, maybe a smaller area? Like for mine, the base plan is, a large area,
Mm-hmm.
but so the existing plan, what you're asking for is the area we're going to do the concept plan for. That would be similar to the base plan, but just a smaller area.
Well, that's a really good question. I'd say in your example, because you have your project site, I think's 100 acres or more, and it would be very difficult to show, any reasonable amount of resolution um, for that in this size paper. So what I might suggest you consider is you place your base plan uh, and then have another window showing the area that you're planning to apply design to, right? So we could call it the area of interest, or where you're going to be designing versus the project site being this, much larger package. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I mean, in that case, like for my like overall the 120 acres, my base plan would be the existing plan.
Right. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll do a side piece that's a zoom in of the area we would be working on.
Yeah, that's probably, the easiest way to go forward with that. And you may find if you find that you can't do that on one sheet, you can certainly duplicate, you can have multiple sheets in there. It's just ideal if you can do it all in one, but if not, it's not a huge, not a huge deal. But that's how I would approach it, because I think your project site versus the area that you want to apply some design to, it's um, quite a small percentage, and understandably, there's no need to be designing because I from what I recall, that forested areas was previously logged quite a while ago. Is that correct? So it's kind of it's not recovering, but it's a happy forest with lots
Yeah, it
of
was
water
30
moving.
years ago, so
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty much a forest now, most of it.
yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we could go over, like I'm behind a couple lessons, maybe we could go
Oh,
over.
okay.
I'm not sure what I have. I have some of that filled in for the next two lessons, and then maybe we could look at some ideas I have for my concept plan.
Okay. Do you want us to be looking at your project file at this point?
Um, Possibly. Afraid to show it. I don't know what's there.
Oh,
This should be
there you go.
up to where. So I think, yeah, I got the cross section.
Yeah, that
I
looks
think
great.
that was just graded. And so,
Yes. Yeah, I left you some comments for that.
yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to look at the comments or
Well, you
anything.
did a great job.
Okay.
I'll give you a snapshot of some of the only thing I added here was really regarding scale, because this is supposed to be 1-to-1, right? So it's the same scale vertically as horizontally. And in the comments I left you, I found this potentially confusing. So I wasn't sure if 225 was the whole line or just between the end of the two arrows here. So it's
Oh,
pretty
yeah, okay, got it.
pretty minor. But
Yeah.
if you were doing this again, um, that is a fairly important piece. The other was just some notes on the heights of some of the major elements. I think that was in the rubric, if I'm not mistaken. But no, that's great. This is a tough assignment, and you did a great job on that. So it really gives us a very good feel for that part of your project site right in there. So nice work. Local plant survey. So the
So
plant, so
I
this
got
is
that filled in.
great. And then I guess this is the next little chunk to look at, the plant system design. So,
Oh, I think I missed something up. I don't think I have. What was up to, oh yeah, there's some other stuff up there I haven't filled out. Um, yeah, page 2, 109, where it says 109.
right,
Yeah, I've just started doing that.
sure.
Uh, but I think the next 2 pages are done.
Yeah,
Okay.
just you got some there, and then you can do your SWOT analysis, which, and during some exercises, I would say this is pretty informative and obvious, and maybe in this exercise, it's, a little less vital, but things do pop up. But again, like many of the assignments, this is the main focus, is that plant system design, in terms of time and energy. And to make it as easy as possible for you, let me just take a look at what the student did. So here you can see the base plan and then the highlighted area where they're proposed fig guild. And then that's what this space here is. Right in here. And then of course, this is existing material. And then this is where they're gonna actually do their little plant system design right here. And then that is, so where I'm going with this is a nice scale to do where you have, you know, a significant plant or two and you sort of build around it. That way it doesn't have to be, you know, some students, if you go on the discussion board for that lesson, I'm trying to remember what number it was. I think it's 8. Yeah. And let me see who we could take a look at. That was.
Is that plant system design what goes in the concept plan also, or?
Yeah, that's right. So
Oh, okay.
it ends up building um, everything we're doing is sort of building into that final concept. And that's the beauty of this. So this example that Allison did, she did a marvelous job. Here's her 5-acre parcel, and then she's going to look at this space here. And honestly, this is quite a large area. So she did that, did a lot of work with her plant interaction and placement here. So you could certainly do that, but you can also do something much smaller. It could just have been this,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I'm actually seeing the link as far as on the screen.
Oh, sorry, I am not. Okay, sorry about that. I had her document open and I wasn't sharing the right screen. There we go. So here's her 5-acre parcel. I got to get my pointer tool again. There we go. 5 acres, and then this is showing this plant system design area, which is, you know, it's pretty big. If you look at the scale, it's a couple 100 feet in length and probably, you know, equal distance in width. So this is the area she did and did a beautiful job. No issues at all. All I'm saying here is if you chose to do something smaller, you are quite welcome to do that. Doesn't have to be a huge area. And then she did a little cross section, which is helpful. So that's one example, or a couple now, but it again doesn't have to be quite this large for this assignment. Now, of course, the next assignment, we then get into zone 1, and that's going to have, you know, if you structure it in such a way where your plant system design is part of zone 1, then it makes that assignment a little bit easier. But yeah, that's one example. We can go back to our this example here. So you can see this is quite a bit smaller. And given you're trying to catch up, you might want to consider that. You know, I'm not suggesting the smallest possible area, but just keep that in the back of your mind that you might want to, oops, let's go there. So important things to consider. And let's see some of the notes there. You can always check back on that video we did for that week if I don't catch everything that I should here. Trying to grab something. So yeah, we're being in plan view, so you're directly overhead. And you're showing plants at their full grown size. That's always important. I'm just trying to find how many plants that is kind of the minimum. It seems to me that if we go there, they were asking for a couple of existing. All right, there's probably quite a bit of info on here. Yeah. Hmm. Well, we used to have kind of a minimum, like include 2 existing plants, 2 existing trees or shrubs. So you definitely want to try and include something that's existing. Now, some project sites, there may be no existing material there, and that's fine. You can certainly work with a new planting, but do keep that in mind. Again, I would try and, go with something maybe in your zone 1 and something that's going to be manageable for you, whatever that looks like.
Okay, yeah, I have a couple of ideas I could share with you, I guess.
Hmm.
So if you go to that, I guess that cross section that's the closest I could
Okay.
maybe describe where some things would be. So kind of to the right of the Cobb Cottage is where it says grasses and meadow flowers. That's where the sun kind of hits there for part of the day.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the only, the best maybe spot that, could be some kind of like a vegetable garden.
Nice.
And I think since nobody's going to be living there full time, that I would
Mm.
make like a perennial,
Yep. Good
type
idea.
thing. But it would need some pretty heavy fencing from bears and rabbits and things like that being
Right.
unattended. Um, and then the roof already has the water capture with, well, there's a rain barrel on the left, but I could put the water down to the right. Um,
Is it just a rain barrel or a cistern of?
It has a rain barrel on that side, but I don't know how to get the water. I haven't decided how to put the water down. So the bank goes up behind the cottage. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
you're only seeing the front view, but it goes up so that the back of the cottage is kind of
Ah,
a little bit underground. So that would have to be terraced and maybe with some swales across maybe, and then the water that runs down from the roof somehow
mm.
goes into there.
I'll show you what I don't know. We've only got about 5 minutes left here, but I should show you what we've been up to. And it kind of plays into what you're describing here. Let's see where we're at. So we ended up constructing a really large infiltration rain garden, infiltration pit, whatever you want to call it. So the bottom here is our zone 1. This is going to be a real wet spot. But this second level, this is where all of our perennial edibles and medicinals are going to be. And basically, it's going to be passively watered through the fact that that this is going to pool water in it. And once it hits the top of this catch basin, that little catch basin there, then it'll start to overflow. But when we, and this is all the subgrade, this is the preparation. I'm just trying to move along here. There we go. So we got some soil in here. So we're going to get about a 9 to 12 inch pooling height on top of our, 12 to 18 inches of topsoil. But when we get to the second level here, you can see, well, maybe not easily here. There we go. There is the beginning. That was our first rain event. We had a little bit of erosion happening with the inlet here. This I got planted before the rain, so this is just wetland plants. And then the second layer is going to be where we have our perennial edibles. Let me just, I don't think I have, well, that's a decent picture. Let me just draw on this. Our water pooling height roughly is going to be, well, it's not a very, it's kind of hard to draw here, but you can see pooling height's going to be well below the crown of these plants that are on the second level, but they will have access to that sort of to water that does get stored there. So this is one way you could approach your situation where you are trying to, an absentee owner and you're wanting to support some plantings here. To have it done in a passive way, you might find is a lot easier rather than trying to automate some irrigation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that gives me an idea. I could do more of an oblong, like a long skinny, rather than trying to go up the different levels.
Mhm.
I could have more of one level that was in the center of that bank.
Sure. Yeah, there's all sorts of ways you can spin this. Now, the one thing I would just keep in mind is if you are doing some infiltration, we'll call it a rain garden for lack of a better word, because it is in essence that. You want to try and ensure that the bottom of the rain garden, that zone 1, it represents, in and around 10% of your total collection. So if we had 1,000 square foot rooftop, we'd want at least 100 square foot of basin. And then you're going to get, it is a little bit dependent on soils, but that's just a very general average. And that'll allow the area to infiltrate properly and not be, turned into a pond all winter. Because you don't want to do that. That's not what we're trying to do here. But you will benefit the plantings in and around the area and also downhill. So downslope from our rain garden is an orchard, and it's a part of our orchard that's suffered a bit through the last couple of years of being very dry. So something just to keep in the back of your mind is that whole passive uh, irrigation if you have the topography that allows for it. But I would say having an absentee owner for plantings to be successful, you've identified a number of key parts, and that one is the fencing, but the other would be how to maintain some level of irrigation.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. So we are really pretty much getting towards the end of our hour here. Do you have any other questions or anything you wanted to present, Pandora, before we wrap it up?
No, that's about all I can wrap my mind around right now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you think that the timeframes we were talking about might work for you? I mean, you can give it a try and just see where it goes. Um, and if
I
you
will do
feel it,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
will
if
do
it doesn't
that.
work, well, you have the option of retaking the course, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Um, okay. Well, I really appreciate you joining me this morning. It was great to chat with you and take a look at your project, some of your project work. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, during the next week or so, don't hesitate to drop me a note and happy to help you out. And look forward to seeing some of your work as you get caught up. If you end up submitting all of your work all at once on that last week, um, that's when it gets really tough to comment on older assignments. So I'll certainly do my best because these are, the zone one um, assignment is an important one, and I'll do my best to give you some good feedback with that. But if you can submit as you complete, that gives me a little more opportunity to give you as much feedback as possible.
Yep. Okay.
Right
Thanks for your help. I'll do my best.
on. Yeah, well, you take care and you know, I pass along um, my best wishes. Sorry to hear about your family situation, and great to great to hear you got a new puppy. Hey,
Yep. She's surprisingly sleeping at my feet at the
wow,
desk, and she never does that. She's always nipping at my feet. So
wow.
maybe that's the secret. I need to play your lectures while I'm trying to work, or some
Yeah,
music or something.
yeah. Well, you take care, Pandora, and again, thanks again for this morning. And we'll look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.